In this video, I'm going to show you how to evaluate AI models so that you have the right information in order to choose the right AI model for your specific use case. Let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice that I'm inside of an AI agent workflow here, but the workflow itself doesn't really matter. We're pretty much going to be going over some key concepts that you should consider when you are picking an AI model. So let's go into the Model Settings tab. And the first thing we'll do is let's take a look at the list of all of the AI models available. You'll notice that there are over 90 different AI models available, and there are some considerations that you should take into account when choosing an AI model. For a full list, you can always look at our documentation where we list out all of these considerations. These include things like the price. Every model is going to have a different price per token, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The latency, which refers to the time it takes to generate a response. The output quality, this is more of a qualitative thing that you're going to judge for yourself whether or not you like the output of that model, and the context window. And this determines the maximum amount of information that you're able to actually feed into the model. We'll look at all of these in just a second, and I'll give you some examples of some models that are proficient in some areas and some that are not in others, so that you can make that determination for yourself. You can also find a full list of all of our available models inside of our documentation if you'd like to compare and contrast models to one another, but I also recommend you just take a look at the model selector here. So when we're looking at an AI model, we talked about price, and typically the trade-off that you're going to make is cheaper models are going to typically be a little bit faster, but they might not output a complex response like you're looking for. Now, that's not to say that these cheaper models are not capable. In fact, they are capable in most situations, and for the most part, you're going to be utilizing these cheap models for more automation-related tasks. The more expensive models also tend to have more reasoning capabilities. And what that's going to allow is for more complex and intricate responses. So this is good for your final output for things like data processing and various other things that might require a little more, thinking. I'm using those thinking in air quotes, but a little more reasoning when it comes to generating the response. So when we look at the models themselves, you have the ability to sort, and we're going to sort by prompt cost. And this is going to show you the cheapest models all the way to, if we scroll at the bottom, the most expensive models here. So you can see that all of the costs are related to this MTOC, and MTOC means million tokens. So if we clear this filter and I simply select this Claude 3.5 Haiku, you can see that there are costs associated with prompting the model, and there are costs associated with the model's response. And typically prompting the model is a little bit cheaper to do. Otherwise, they are pretty much the same cost. We can think of tokens as being similar to words, and the number of tokens equates to about 3/4 the amount of words. So you can see here in the response size, we have 100 tokens, and that equals about 75 words. So it's pretty closely related. You can pretty much think of tokens as being words, although you're going to get about 3/4 the amount of words for the amount of tokens, because tokens can mean like a part of a word, depending on how that prompt is given to the AI. So obviously the cost is very important. You'll have to evaluate that on your own. The other thing that we're going to look at is the latency of the models. And I want to show you a tool that's going to allow you to evaluate these models side by side so that you don't have to retest them one by one. This tool is called the Profiler, and there's actually a tab here at the very top right that's going to show you different profiles. You can choose different models and compare them side by side by using this profiler. So you can see here on the left, I have Claude 3.5 Haiku Bedrock, and on the right, we can select a different model to test out. So maybe I will choose to compare this to something like GPT-4 Mini. We can also adjust the temperature and the max response size. Maybe we want to make sure that they have the exact same response size. So I'm going to turn this all the way up. So it looks like 4096. Let's make sure that this matches, and we'll say 4096. There we go. And for all intents and purposes, the settings are the same. So we can compare them side by side simply by typing in a prompt. Write a long form blog post about space. Let's see what it generates. And we can simply hit enter. And both of these models will go side by side. And you can see what's happening. It looks like the Claude 3.5 Haiku model started generating a bit faster. However, the GPT-4 Mini model is actually generating at about the same speed once it gets going. And you can also evaluate these models side by side, given the exact same parameters. So when we compare these two models, you can see a couple of different things. One is that Claude 3.5 Haiku actually generated a shorter response than GPT-4 Mini. So if that's something that we're considering when writing our blog posts and we want a longer response, maybe this it can be interpreted that this model actually follows that prompt a bit more closely. The other thing to look at is you can see the number of tokens used and the cost to those tokens. Now, you can see the cost here, and then at the bottom, you can see the cost here. So this costs, fractions of a penny in order to actually generate this. It was like 0.0008 of a penny for the prompt and the response combined, versus Claude 3 Haiku was slightly more expensive, 0.003. So in this case, GPT-4 Mini generated a longer response, which we're looking for in our, blog post generator example. And it's also slightly cheaper. And that might make it more compelling for us to choose that model over Claude 3.5 Haiku. So the other thing that we should take into account is the context window. And that's the amount of information that we're able to send into the model. Now, different models have different context windows. And if we look at some of the models that are available, so I'm going to open up a new profile and look at the model selector, we can actually click into each individual model and you can actually see the context window here. 128,000 tokens for GPT-4 Mini and 200,000 tokens for Claude 3.5 Haiku, which we were comparing against each other. What that means is that we can actually provide more information to Claude 3.5 Haiku. However, depending on the amount of context we're providing, this may not be a big factor. So unless you're providing it a very long document that actually reaches that 200,000 token max, these might be the same. So when you're uploading large documents or scraping full websites and things like that, you might want a much larger context window. And then the last thing that we'll want to look at is the maximum response size. And we kind of saw this when we were looking at different settings. But if we look at the max response size for Claude 3.5 Haiku, this one can only output 4,000 tokens versus GPT-4 Mini can output up to 16,000 tokens. So it can actually output a response that is 4 times larger. And so if you're looking to generate huge articles or research papers and things all in one prompt, this might be something that is worth looking into. So let's take a look at another model. And if we go down, we can see Gemini 2.0 Flash. And what's interesting about Gemini 2.0 Flash is that it actually has a 1 million token context window, meaning we can upload entire novels to it if we'd like to. Let's go ahead and use this model, and we're going to give it the maximum response size of 8,000 tokens. And we're going to give this the maximum response size of 16,000 tokens. And then we are going to give it the same prompt. Write a long form article about, let's say, dogs. Now you can see all 3 of these models are firing at the same time. And you can even see other things like whether or not these models are streaming their responses or not. Now, Gemini 2.0 Flash actually generated its response and has completed its response already. And you can see that the response was very cheap. It was a fraction. It was like 0.1 pennies, right? It was almost a penny in order to generate the response. And GPT-4 Mini was about 1 cent to generate the response, and Claude 3.5 Haiku was a little less than a cent. So you can compare these models side by side and figure out what model is right for you. Now, you can also do this inside of the workflow. You can take a look at your main flow, and if you go into automations and you click on a specific block that uses an AI model, you can actually open this in the profiler and compare different models for that specific step in your workflow. And when you open the profiler, you're able to give it the exact prompt that you were using in that specific step. That's basically all there is to it. It really comes down to evaluating your particular use case and determining what's important to you. And so I recommend that you take these factors into account: the price, how long it takes to generate the response, what the response looks like, and whether or not that response is desirable for your specific use case, the amount of information that you're able to pass through the model if you are uploading large files, and then lastly, the maximum response size, how much it's actually able to generate for you. So hope you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, drop us a like. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates to Mind Studio. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.